It's football and other F words after dark. That's right. Due to some scheduling conflicts and everything, we are actually going live on Tuesday night. This will still be in a podcast on Wednesday, and maybe I'll just put it back out on YouTube tomorrow and Twitter tomorrow for those that are known for the 1 p.m. things and still want to see our smiling faces. But I am Zach. You follow me on Twitter at FWordsPod. He's Mike. You follow him on Twitter at Mike Herndon NFL. And, of course, we got Stoney at Stoney Keeley on Twitter. We got paulkarski.com, stackingtheinbox.com, sobrosnetwork.com, and Bluegrass Beverages, our sponsors, our wonderful, wonderful sponsors. Over 51 years now, because I think the 51 mark has come and gone. I think I remember standing in a parking lot.
We celebrated that,
making predictions.
Yes.
We never have gone back to see what our predictions
we don't have to
like and who was right and wrong. I think we were both wrong on Tony Pollard more than likely, but that's neither here nor there because we were right about a lot of things heading into this game. And after watching the all 22, I have to say we were pretty right about some people for a long time that maybe looked a little bit better than in the broadcast angle. But let's just jump right in. Let's start with the first string offense. And, of course, your comments and questions are welcome. But let's start with the first string offense. Actually, let's start with special teams. That's really where I want to go because I just want to say something. I just want to say Craig Ackerman was a terrible coach, and he was a terrible coach for 6 years. And I've been saying this for 6 years, it feels like. But special teams coaching matters, no matter what anybody wants to say about, well, anybody should be able just to catch a punt. I'd like to put you out there and try to see if you can catch a punt 10 times out of 10. Probably you couldn't even catch one. So it matters. Special teams coaching matters. And Colt Anderson put his headset in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, hang his clipboard from the rafters, do everything you can. Let's throw that motherfucker parade because he deserves it. You have Kearis Jackson was the second longest kickoff return. Jaquan Jackson tied for the longest punt return. When was the last time we could say either of those things about the Tennessee Titans? Mike, our Tennessee Titans historian, I'll ask you.
It's been a minute for sure. I feel like they've had moments where they've had good return games. Pac-Man Jones would probably be the most recent that I can remember.
Which was the early aughts.
Yeah, everyone
was a rapper, not a producer. That's how long ago it was.
Everyone talked themselves into the idea that Adoree Jackson was going to be that, but he never was. And it was great. Kearis Jackson has been playing too much college football 25, hitting the back-to-back spin moves. But besides that, 2 good returns, good coverage units.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was a good showing from the Titans special teams, except for Nick Folk leaving a 52-yard field goal short in August. Yikes!
Can we talk about that? Because it seemed like the holder, because him and the holder were talking in the broadcast after that as they were leaving the field. Now, is that just a kicker blaming the holder? I don't know, but it sounds like it looked like he was talking about and then the broadcast thought that someone touched it. And guess what? Because we were watching on News Channel 5, we don't get a freaking replay because they hate showing replays of anything, even in the regular season game. So I just kind of wonder if something else went on besides just Nick Folk. But Braden, is it Braden or Brandon? Braden Narveson?
Braden. Yeah.
I want to see some more Braden Narveson. Like, do we need Nick Folk in preseason? We should have Braden Narveson out there doing that 52-yard kick, right? Stoney, I'll ask you that question.
Yeah, Nick Folk's going to break a hip if he's not careful. Come on, the old man. We need to let him get his rest before the season starts. But I'm with you guys. I'm wondering if, since it's football and other F words after dark, if maybe we should talk a little more sexy,
a little bit more like this.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. I will say you brought up Adoree Jackson, and everybody thought that he was going to be the next great returner for this team. Adoree Jackson stumbled so Kyle Phillips could fumble. Okay.
It's true.
Is that in your poetry book? That should be in your next book.
It is. Yeah, I actually wrote a poem. I'm just completely derailing and taking the show hostage, but I actually wrote a poem today called Dogs, and it's about disciplined assholes with grit. So I'll share that.
There you go. That sounds like do you want to read it? Am I putting you on the spot? Or you finished product?
I could read it. Yeah, it is a finished product. I don't know do you really want to do this right now?
Let's do it. How long is well, let me ask you this. How long is the poem?
It's 8 verses. We'll see if anybody can pick up on this as I'm reading it instead of them reading it. Disciplined assholes with grit. Determined aggression will guide us. Drive against waning gumption. Don't answer with guilt. Do assess willful gang tackling. Dominance always worth the gamble. Disciplined assholes with grit. Does a winning group make? How about that?
I like it.
Beautiful. That was perfect for football and other F words after dark.
An ode to L'Jarius Sneed.
Yeah. Yes.
Which goes great with Movie Monday over at Stacking Inbox, because I forgot to do Film Friday, so
happens
Movie Monday.
Happens to the best of us.
Yeah. And look, hey, we got not bad. Can we get a poem every week? So now you have something else on your
something else to write.
I thought the special teams was great. What are your all's thoughts on this? Because there's been a lot of talk, and a lot of people are saying, well, will they keep both Jacksons? And what about Mason Kinsey and his ability? Because I know he's Mike's wide receiver 1, but I don't think he's going to make the team. But Mike, I'll ask you, where are you at on this idea? I think sometimes we've preached that the back of the end roster guy has to play special teams, but we also forget that maybe, just maybe, that back of the end roster guy actually also has to play his position. And I have a hard time when I'm watching that all 22 looking at Kearis Jackson and go, that's an NFL wide receiver. So it has to be both, right? It can't just be, unless you got like a Matthew Slater, right? You can't just have a guy on this particular roster with its depth that just does special teams. Am I wrong on that?
No, I think you're right in the fact that you do need to be able to play the wide receiver position passably to be on the roster. Because look, I mean, especially if you're just going to be the punt returner, right? Like if you're going to have someone else returning kicks, potentially one of the starting running backs, which, I wouldn't blame them if they're saving that for regular season versus, getting Tony Pollard.
That's what I said on the football show was like, well, everybody's kind of forget Tajay Spears is probably your kick returner.
Yeah, I kind of think that may be the direction they end up going. But if it's just punt returning, like punt returning is valuable in that, like, you have to catch the ball and not turn it over. But you don't have to have a super dynamic guy. Like, you need a trustworthy guy who can get you what's blocked, get you 10 yards and set your offense up to get on the field. So yeah, I think it's going to be a combination of who they can trust in the punt return game, because I do think that's important. You're going to have someone you can trust in the punt return game. But once you clear the bar of trust, I don't think it matters if you're like the most dynamic guy versus the second most dynamic guy. I think it's going to, go back to, a little bit of who's the better receiver. And by the way, just to tie a bow on the Nick Folk thing, he has been vindicated by the All-22. It was blocked. It was tipped. So
about that.
I just checked it because I had to see. And he definitely got tipped.
Just want to say that everybody really gave Nick Folk a hard time after that kick. And I'm the only one. I'm one of the few that did not tweet it. But I just thought I heard them say it. And something looked weird. Like the way that it moved just looked weird to me.
It took a hard right. Yeah.
But I also I gotta give the benefit of the doubt that maybe he's just old too. So like I didn't have access to all 22, so I just had to figure that out. But Stoney, final thoughts on special teams before we move to the offense.
Yeah, I was impressed by Kearis Jackson returning, but watching the tape at wide receiver, not overly impressed by his route running. And I think this staff is going to be a little more patient with Jaquan Jackson. We heard Tyke Tolbert talk a little bit about it earlier today in a media availability about how he's still kind of getting used to the procedural aspects of playing football. I mean, he's been off the ball quite a bit. So you're talking about things like getting in the huddle, getting a play, getting out there, like learning to like just play receiver in the NFL. I think they're going to be a little more patient with him. And I think he was good enough in the opportunities that he was given to show promise. And I just can't imagine a scenario where it comes down to Kearis and Jaquan and they pick Kearis. I think Jaquan Jackson still has the benefit of being highly sought after Tyke Tolbert, or I don't know if sought after is the right term, but vouched for him, really vetted him. Yeah, highly vetted. I think they're going to ride with that, and maybe I don't know. I think you have to look at it like, if you're going to make the team as a wide receiver, you're going to have to play receiver some. I don't think it's just going to be a return thing, because they could go to a number of other positions to find a returner if they need to. So the added value, what they're trying to do there, I still think as electric as Kearis Jackson was in the return game on Saturday, I still think it's Jaquan Jackson's spot to lose.
Z Dean says Jaquan Jackson is the new Des Fitzpatrick. That is, I can already tell you he's better than Des Fitzpatrick.
Oh man,
he at least contributed in a preseason game, unlike Des Fitzpatrick. So he's already ahead. I want to talk. Let's start with the offense now. We're going to go string by string on the offense, and let's start with the running backs. Mike, I don't think there's anything you can really glean from their usage. I think it was more of, we don't know when these drives are going to end, so we have to make sure they're getting their reps. Do you think there's any major takeaway from their usage, not from what you saw on the field?
The numbers end up being very close as far as like total touches. I looked at the splits between who got used on third downs. Both of them saw third down snaps. Spears saw 2, Pollard saw 1. Red zone snaps, broke down evenly, pretty much. I think Pollard had a 1 snap advantage on Spears in that department. I did think it was notable that when they got down to the 1 yard line, Pollard was the one in the game. If you're a fantasy football player, I think, those are the runs that you really want him to be in the game for. I think maybe Pollard ends up getting more of those opportunities. He is a slightly bigger back, a little bit more direct. But I think they're both going to have roles. They're both going to have plays, concepts. Callahan talked pretty at length about it with the media, I think maybe today or the day before, just discussing that they're going to have packages and they're going to kind of come in and out based on the concepts that they are comfortable with and things like that. So I think it's going to be about as close to a 50-50 split as you can get. And let me also say,
but you don't think it's going to be every play? Like, there's some people are like, oh, they're going to start doing it every play. And I'm like, no, they're not going to rotate it in and out every play.
But I don't know. I also don't think it's going to necessarily be like whole series for Pollard, whole series for Spears. I think it's going to be couple plays here, couple plays there. It's kind of going to be like they did in the preseason game. Honestly, I think it's going to be pretty similar to that. And I think it's going to be great that both of them are dynamic pass catchers, and give you that element. Because we already saw it, and we can save the Levis talk for when we get to it. But we already saw the comfortability with the checkdowns and them turning those checkdowns into productive plays as well. I think that's a massive deal for this offense and what they want it to be. So I'm very excited. Pollard, to me, actually going back on second watch, I think Pollard to me might have been the most excited player I was most excited about coming out of this game, even more so than like Chance Campbell and some of the other guys that maybe saw more playing time and also flashed. But Pollard was just super dynamic and looked great in his first action. So I'm very fired up about what he looked like.
Stoney, do you miss Derrick Henry?
Oh man, don't make me be the villain on this show. I love Derrick Henry. How dare you?
Do you miss him?
No. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be transparent.
I
with
didn't
our
say,
viewers.
do you hate him? Do you wish you could break his knees with crowbars? I just asked if you missed him.
No, I think this is. I think the Titans are gonna be okay in the backfield, man. Spears didn't really have any big play the way that Pollard did. Pollard ripped off a run. I mean, showed like the acceleration that he still has. If you give him a lane, he can get up to quick speed pretty quickly. But Spears didn't have the chunk play, but man, the vision and the cut on that touchdown run was just, oh my God, a thing of beauty.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Will Levis. Be honest with me, and this is a question for both of you. Did any of you losers buy an $8 bottle of mayonnaise perfume?
No, I did not.
I didn't.
I'd say something about this. I don't care that he does this stuff. First off, he should be doing it with Duke. By the way,
Duke's
if you're going to
is
choose
the
one of the
superior
mayo
mayo.
companies, Duke is not only the superior mayo, it's also the name of the football. The football's called the Duke. It's just easy branding. I just don't understand people who can't make these connections.
Listen, it sounds to me like Duke is cheap. They need to pony up the Hellman's bucks.
The Hellman's is an awful mayonnaise. This will not make me want to buy Hellman's ever. But for years, this podcast, and this is before you, Stoney. For years, this podcast has railed against the Jaguars fan base over this idea that the Titans fan base, eats mayonnaise because they saw one guy eat mayonnaise back in like 2017 or 2016, and they just relentlessly made fun of us, even though they are the ones who tried to make fun of us, filled kiddie pool up with mayonnaise to dive into it in Jacksonville, which is just disgusting. And here we are in 2024, and our quarterback, and it's a hilarious ad. Like, I have no problem that he's getting paid to do this and that he's doing any of this. And it's a hilarious ad. But it's sold out within an hour. And now we can't say that we are not we're now spritzing ourselves with mayonnaise. Like, it's all that hard work that me and Mike and Lebowski and Internet Keith and all these guys have put in over the years to quell these rumors, squash these rumors that this is a mayonnaise-based fan base. Will Levis had to walk into our lives and put out this thing. But I will say, it is hilarious. I think it's great that he can lean into it, and he's making money off of something like that. Like, I don't care. But I do care that he took a hit in a preseason game like the one he took. And it doesn't, like, it's the first drive of the first preseason game, and he's already launching his body and taking helmets to the side of his ribs and stuff. When you saw that, I of course put out a tweet, and it was great. And you could tell Brian Callahan didn't really like that it happened. Yeah. He kind of covered it up like, oh, it's good to get hit. But you know that he said something to Will Levis, right? Like
100%.
What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I rolled my eyes so hard when that play happened because I was like, Will, come on, buddy. You're better than this. You're smarter than this. Come on. I don't like, I kind of actually admire that stuff during the regular season. During the preseason, it takes it to a different level of dumb. Now, I do think I saw what he saw. He saw a huge wide open green space at the end zone, which is why he tucked and ran in the first place. But D Winters closed that shit fast. By the way, I wish D Winters was on this roster. He'd be the best linebacker on this team right now. But D Winters closed that shit fast and lit him up. And I'm just thankful that Will Levis thought better of the idea because I saw it in real time, going through his head. I'm going to do the John Elway helicopter spin into this motherfucking end zone. And I saw that going through his head, and I'm just glad he thought better of it before he actually committed to that ridiculous play. Mariota did that in the preseason a few years ago, didn't he? He had like some ridiculous jump.
Brian Callahan spent all offseason talking about, well, he's got to learn to get down. He's got to learn to slide. He's got to learn to protect himself better. And Stoney, like I said, very first drive, he takes a massive shot to the ribs. And I'm just like, what the fuck is this guy thinking? And I get with what Mike's saying is like, you see the open green, but got to see that there was a guy coming at you and you got to slide. Like, you just got to, and for a preseason game, like if this is a playoff game or game to get you in the playoff, I can understand making the jump and all this stuff, but it's a preseason game. We got to crank it down. What were your thoughts, Stoney?
think about how the complexion of this show that we're doing here tonight changes if Will Levis takes a massive shot and all of a sudden he's like done for the year in a preseason game against the 49er backups. I think Titans fans are probably down bad. We're having to talk people off the ledge this week. I was at a graduation party. My cousin graduated from the Harvard of the South, aka Middle Tennessee State, on Saturday, and we had the game on, and I'm sitting there screaming at the TV as it's happening, don't get down. And lo and behold, he doesn't. He takes the shot. I didn't even notice like an attempt to slide whatsoever. And it's funny. We can laugh about it now, but I really like James's comment in the chat right here. Does Will Levis have a golden retriever brain? It's becoming not cute anymore. And yeah, like it's funny, but at the same time, it's like, dude, this is one of the things that we said you had to rein in if you wanted to have longevity for your career. This is a franchise that is clearly putting pieces around him as if they're putting their chips in the middle of the table on this guy. They're going to build around him. He's the piece for the foreseeable future, and you can't jeopardize that. And that was the concerning thing here. I know our buddy Easton was okay with the hit. I had the hardest okay boomer I've ever dropped on anybody on Saturday night, and nobody saw it in the mentions. But it's good to get in there and get popped one time and knock off the rust. No, it's not. It's not good to ever get popped like that. Even, in a regular season game. I'm with you, Zach. Like there's got to be something on the line if you're going to throw your body out there in a vulnerable position with reckless abandon like that. You got to have something on the line. And I don't think a preseason opener against backup 49ers is the time or the place for such a play. So,
I mean, here's the thing. I just don't get this idea that you have to get hit like at some point in the preseason. Go ahead and get your hits out of the way. And listen, it's an athlete thing too. Like the athletes say it. I don't understand it. And it's just like, if you got to take the hit, like do it out in the practice field or something. Like if you need a real hit, do you really need the one in the game in the preseason? Do you really need to take a hit like that, where your body's like completely exposed and you're in the air at the mercy of someone else? Like that to me is like, there's, if you want to say, oh, well, it's good to take a sack or it's good to get hit, in a different setting or something. It's just that hit was pretty bad. But there's a lot of good about Will Levis's stuff, because he actually did listen to Brian Callahan on a bunch of other things. He didn't bat. He was like a 90% completion rate on things that he listened to with his head coach. But, time to throw was 2.22 seconds, which is really good. He had a good pocket from pretty much the whole game. When you go back and watch it, I mean, there was nothing really too concerning from it other than the fact that it's against second string. But hey, we've seen this first string go up against second string and third stringers and look like shit. So I'm going to take it. I think we should take it. The other thing is that his completion rate was up because he took some easy passes. He took what the defense gave him, and which again relates to, the time to throw, which relates to his average depth of target was much lower than his career average, and his yards per attempt, which is a kind of a give and take, but he was super efficient, super clean. He made the right reads when he needed to and took the throws that he needed to make. And he got what's very necessary, a good connection with Calvin Ridley. The Calvin Ridley end zone fade doesn't really faze me at all. That was a lot of, they just let the cornerbacks mug the wide receivers all night. So, I mean, it's nothing really big on that particular play, but I do like that they had a connection. So, offensive line aside, Will Levis in a vacuum. Mike, you go first.
I thought he really looked good. No one's ever been more excited to see 2.8 yards depth of target, average depth of target than I was with Will Levis in this game. But it was like you saw the stuff that you wanted to see from him. And look, I mean, if you look at his 5 attempts, you had the goal line fade to Ridley, but then the rest of them were a slant flat combo that he throws to Pollard quick on third down to pick up that third down in the low red zone. Then you had a check down to Pollard, then you had a check down to Ridley, and then you had the screen pass to Spears. Those are the 5 attempts. Nothing was down the field, which is good. It's showcasing his ability to stay patient, play within the offense, and I think it is actually important that he was rewarded with those decisions by the offense moving down the field and scoring touchdowns. And ultimately, I think that for Callahan is a win because he's going to be able to go in and tell him, look, you trust the offense, trust your playmakers, and look what happened. Yes, it's against backups. We don't need to get carried away with the results here, but the decision making, the accuracy, I actually thought his throw on the it was on the ball to Ridley. I'm pretty sure it was where he basically got his drive leg clipped by J.C. Latham, and still is able to put like an accurate ball right on the face mask of Calvin Ridley, puts him in a position to be able to run after the catch. All that accuracy was great. Even the ball to Ridley on the fade, I thought was exactly where it needed to be. It was inbound, but it was on the sidelines. It would have given Ridley a chance to make a play had he not got mugged by Rock Ya-Sin. I thought everything Levis did besides not getting down was pretty great. And if I want to nitpick, I could say Treylon Burks is open early in that read on the 3rd down run where he took off at the goal line, and then both Ridley and Spears and Wiley actually all get open late in that down, but he'd already made up his mind. He was, running that bitch in there at that point. But I thought his decision-making was great. Accuracy looked good, was in command of the offense. I like that they got that little offsides penalty at the end of the quarter. I thought that was nice with the hard count. Just looked in total command, which is what you want to see.
I love that people were like, I can't believe that, Lloyd Cushenberry didn't snap it. He wasn't supposed to snap it, you idiots.
I don't think they were ever snapping that ball. Yeah.
They're trying to get him off sides. Have y'all never heard of hard counts and stuff? Ryan Tannehill was really good at it. Like, I know that we had Aaron Brewer as your center last year, but like it's time to grow up and understand that real football is back. And Stoney, I'll ask you the same question. Don't go too hard into essentially what Mike said, but I mean, what were your initial takeaways from Will Levis? Because he did do everything that Bill Callahan pretty much said to do, including on the preseason, the command of the offense, the preseason snaps, all that kind of stuff, or the pre-snaps.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Mike said. The only thing I would add is that it kind of reminded me of the plan whenever, I can't remember if it was minicamp or training camp itself started, when they were out there working on a lot of the short intermediate stuff to try and kind of rein in the wildness of Will Levis and get him into a rhythm and get him some reps running those types of plays and throwing those types of throws. That's what it reminded me of on Saturday. And it did kind of make me wonder if that was the plan with them. It's like, hey, you've got meaningful game rep action. Let's go out here. Don't worry about taking a shot 40 yards down the field. Let's get some work on getting into a rhythm with these types of throws. I thought he looked very comfortable in command of the offense. Looked like he was out there playing quarterback for, I know that's not a great analytical term, but you just have a feel for the pocket, a feel for where your receivers are at. Like, he just seemed to be in a rhythm, and that was an encouraging thing to me. As for the goal line fade, I would say a lot of those throws look worse than they actually are, because in a lot of those cases, you're throwing the ball to a spot in the corner of the end zone and not necessarily to the receiver. So if a guy gets mugged by the cornerback, it may look like, oh, wow, that ball's off by 10 yards, but really the intent of the throw was met to begin with.
All right, let's talk about the offensive line, Stoney, and I'll start with you. They picked up a stunt. Hang your cleats up in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, because Dylan Radins and Nicholas Petit-Frere actually picked up a stunt, which is something that the Tennessee Titans offensive line could not do to save their life last year. They were terrible at it, but they were able to do it. I thought that J.C. Latham looked like a rookie, a first-round pick who switched sides and is still adjusting to the speed of the NFL game. but that doesn't necessarily mean it was bad. I just think that it was a very average night. It wasn't electric or elite, and he wasn't pancaking people all the way around. I can tell you one thing: if Skoronski has a guy and J.C. Latham's going to come at you from the side while Skoronski's engaged, that guy's going on the ground.
You're losing
10 times out of 10. 10 times out of 10, that guy's going on the ground. Yeah. I thought Skoronski looked great. Lloyd Cushenberry, negligible. You didn't really notice him or not. I mean, he looked good, but I mean, you just don't. Center play is kind of hard to judge unless you're really, really fucking bad at it.
I think he might have missed the pickup on D Winters on that big loss for Tajay Spears, but I'm not necessarily sure he was expecting anyone to be there to begin with.
Yeah.
So,
and then I thought that Dylan Radins looked fine, and I thought Nicholas Petit-Frere, for a guy that has not played in a very long time and has not practiced for a very long time, looked actually good. Like I was very surprised, and I thought that the right side of the line looks like the right combination for now. I mean, I don't have any reason to think that anybody should come in and unseat either of those two at this moment, even though that Bill Callahan's not giving them, the job yet, apparently. But Stoney, right side of the line, left side of the line. Tell us about what you saw from the offensive line on the first string.
I think that first drive was probably I don't know that we saw as decent of offensive line play in all of 2023. I mean, it just really felt like something was unlocked on Saturday night. I do think there were inconsistencies in the play of J.C. Latham, Lloyd Cushenberry, NPF, even Dylan Radins. It's hard for me to sit here and say a guy missed an assignment, because ultimately I know we can construct what we think the play should have been based on what is typically run in that situation, but I don't feel comfortable doing it if I don't have the playbook and know for sure that his assignment on this play was supposed to be this man. But there were times, now that I've qualified what I'm about to say, there were times that I was kind of wondering, why was Dylan Radins there instead of there? And I don't want to accuse him of missing assignments, but I'm curious about it at the very least. I think he was clearly the least consistent performer of the unit, and I felt like there were plays left on the field that he left out there. I'm trying to be as nice as I can, if you guys can't tell. But I was impressed with NPF.
It looks like you're about to have an aneurysm just trying to be nice. I mean, you don't have to be nice on the show.
Yeah, you're right.
We've been mean to Radins quite a bit.
I'm trying to take it easy, but I don't know what inspired him.
Trying to give myself a stroke by protecting a guy that did not do his job very well.
Yeah. I don't know for sure that he didn't do his job very well. I'm trying to protect my own ass here too, my own reputation. I don't know that he consistently did his job well on Saturday night. I thought NPF was great. I thought he moved really well for a guy that hasn't played a lot of meaningful reps this summer, mirroring guys at the edge, getting his hands on guys, scrapping, wrestling a little bit. I was pretty impressed by him. Light bulb going off moment that John Ojukwu is not taking that job. That's NPF's job. And then J.C. Latham, I felt there were a couple of times that he did get driven back, like he didn't get his feet set quick enough. He didn't anchor quick enough, and he was driven back into the pocket a little bit. You think that's stuff that he's probably going to improve upon as he gets more experience. But man, when he shot that outside hand and just bodied that guy on there's a clip on my Twitter page that is going viral. That was really impressive stuff. And I think it's probably better left tackle play than the Titans have seen since Taylor Lewan retired. But the MVP of the unit to me was Peter Skoronski. I mean, he looked awesome. He looked like rock solid. There's a play where, he takes on a rush and just decides, I'm not going to move back anymore, and just plants his feet and starts moving the guy back in the other direction. And when you factor in the fact that these pass rushers get a head start on the offensive line charging into them, you're not just quelling their momentum, but to generate it back against them was really impressive stuff. I thought Big Meat Pete was technically sound all night and showed an element of power that we haven't necessarily seen from him before.
Mike, I have to say that, you've been a little iffy on the NPF. You've been a little rough on the guy, and I'm going to give you a chance to say your piece on NPF and give him his flowers for this game. But overall, it's all about little victories that you can build on as a unit. And I think that this offensive line had a good start. It was not great. It was not elite, but I thought compared to the previous offensive lines that we've seen in the preseason and in the regular season, this was the best version of any offensive line that we've seen in a while. And with Bill Callahan, you have to think that they can build up on it. So what are your thoughts on how you would grade out the offensive line and its outlook and all that?
Yeah, I thought it was a mostly positive start. I agree that Skoronski was the best looking lineman of the group as far as just play, consistency, all that stuff throughout the night. He looked like a first round, like high first round pick guard in this game. And look, against obviously all this stuff comes with the qualifiers of like there was no Javon Hargrave out there. There was no Nick Bosa out there, right? Like these were backups for the 49ers almost exclusively. But still, you can only play against the guy that's across from you, right? And they're professional athletes too. Most of those guys are going to be on the 49ers that group was playing against in the rotation. So, they're capable football players. I thought Skoronski was good. I thought NPF was shockingly good. I did not expect him to look that good after, 5 days of practice, basically, maybe less than that. I mean, coming off of a shoulder surgery and then whatever the knee cleanup was, I kind of expected him to look pretty bad, honestly. And he, to me, looked probably the second best out of the entire group on Saturday night. So I was impressed with him, excited for him, because I've always thought NPF has the physical skill set. And he's always seemed like a conscientious guy, like smart guy, stuff like that. It's just been putting together some of the like technique stuff, the instincts, the things like that. And I think he's showed a little bit more there in this game than he has in the past. Maybe that's Bill Callahan getting to him. Maybe that's a fresh start. Maybe that's, motivation coming off of, what was a hellish season for him last year. But whatever it is, certainly an encouraging performance from him. I thought Latham was rough in pass protection. They threw the ball super quick, like which we already touched on. So 2.2 seconds. I thought he probably should have been given at least one pressure allowed in the play where he essentially clipped Levis's foot as he was backing into him on that play. He got bull rushed. And again, like, that's not like a hugely alarming play. I think he got caught peeking inside, kind of stopped his feet, stopped his momentum, and then just got caught flat-footed by a pretty good pass rusher in Yetur Gross-Matos. I kind of thought, that was what happened on that play. And then the other one, where he gets beat around the corner with the cross chop, if you look at it, he punches. He's a little early, a little premature with his punch. He gets out there, he's fully extended and gives him a good, long target to kind of chop down. If you look at him the next time he tries that move, which is on that play you mentioned where he stones him and puts him in the ground, he does not go premature. He has his arm bent when he throws that outside punch. Yetur Gross-Matos tries to chop it down, can't get anywhere with it, and then just goes to the ground because Latham is overwhelmingly powerful when he's using proper technique. But I think what he's finding out in this game is if you don't use proper technique in the NFL, you can't just overwhelm guys like you could at Alabama. You are going to have to play with the proper technique, and that's what Bill Callahan's here for. And I think Latham has shown, and even after, like immediately after the game, he was kind of hard on himself, talking about pass protection wasn't where I wanted it to be, all that. So I think he's a guy that seems coachable. He seems, aware of where he needs to improve, and he's got a great coach to learn from who he clearly respects. So I by all means expect him to improve. But yeah, I'm not going to say that was the most impressive debut performance of any tackle I've ever seen.
No.
But nothing alarming either. You also saw him, like you said, when he gets on the double team, The power he has is tremendous. I mean, they completely caved in the whole left side of the line a couple times. When you saw him get out on that crack toss, you saw the movement ability at 6'6", 342 that is special. I think my faith in Latham is not shook whatsoever by that performance, even if it was a little bit rough.
I write about it for Stacking Inbox tomorrow morning in my rookie review, talking about all the rookies. Is like, it wasn't great. It was just very average. It was a lot of the players that we were excited about just delivered like average performances. Nothing great, nothing really bad, nothing terrible or concerning. But I look at it from a Latham perspective with Bill Callahan, who does not like people to make the same mistakes over and over. He's very big on, like, you make one mistake, we're going to correct it until you get it right. And JC Latham, who we know has a tremendous work ethic and takes tremendous pride on being the best and wanting to improve. This is good teach tape. And so I kind of look at it like this. Yes, it was not great. It was not elite. It was an average start for his first preseason action, probably a little bit jitters as well. And I think that he put a lot of stuff on teach tape. Do y'all have anything to say about the first string wide receivers, or can we go on to the rest of them? Because I don't really have much to say. I mean, they were all just kind of who we know they are.
Yep. I'm right there with you.
Okay, so let's head to the second string and third string. We're going to talk about this offense collectively because there's a lot of questions around here. A lot centering around Rupsich, which was what I thought was interesting is that Rupsich, who is in the right guard competition, supposedly played exclusively at left guard in the preseason, while Cole Spencer played exclusively at right guard, which I thought those were flip-flopped, at some point.
And Latavius Simmons as well.
Latavius Simmons was in there. I thought that Rupsich played really well in the left guard spot, and I thought that Cole Spencer surprisingly played really well at the right guard spot. A delightful surprise was going back through and watching Cole Spencer win some one-on-ones and always was looking for work. He was always looking for someone to hit, someone to touch, someone to get his hands on. And I thought that was really good. And I thought Rupsich has maintained, I think he's making the team. Like, Rupsich is really good at what he does, and he can play either left or right. So, where are you guys at? I thought everybody else, though, I thought the tackles were kind of iffy at times. Like, Jerron Christian didn't have a really good game, I thought. Jalen Duncan. Oh, boy, Jalen Duncan. Oh, boy. It's bad. So, where are you guys at on the offensive line depth after preseason week 1? Do you feel better about it? Maybe because the first 5 starters played better, or do you feel worse about it because you're like, man, if the tackles, we have a really good, healthy starting 5, but if one of those starting 5 goes down, it's doom and gloom all over. Where are you at with that, Mike?
I thought Jerron Christian was actually okay in this game based on my viewing of it. I thought Rupsich looks good. I thought Cole Spencer did look pretty good too. He was a little stiff, a little more stiff from a flexibility standpoint than what I was expecting based on his athletic testing. But I mean, he certainly has good power. He was moving bodies in there pretty well. Which is really ultimately what they want in that position, right? Like at the guard spot, they want guys who can generate vertical displacement, which we've talked about before, going back to the Sadiq Charles discussion and why he was a better fit over like Daniel Brunskill, for example, for that right guard spot. So I think Cole Spencer, I don't know that I'd expect him to make the 53, but I think as a stash and develop practice squad guy, I really like him. And I think he could end up being one of those guys that could turn into a starter at some point down the road. But yeah, Rupsich was kind of impressive to me. I wouldn't mind seeing him get some reps with the ones, at some point. And it sounds like he already has in practice. It'll be interesting to see what that rotation looks like with him and Radens during, these Seattle practices the next couple of days. But yeah, I'm intrigued by Rupsich and kind of, okay with Jerron Christian as a backup swing tackle. They've certainly had worse in recent years than what he gave them in this game. And we didn't see Leroy Watson in this game at all, right? I didn't miss him.
If we did, I did not notice him whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't think he was playing. So there's still him. He's still kind of lingering out there as part of the conversation as well.
Stoney, earlier in the episode, you talked about how Radens was a big old dummy who never was in the right spot.
I hate him. Yeah.
Rupsich is, maybe it was just a timing issue. Is like, well, he's been getting a lot of work at the left guard, not really right guard, so we might as well just play him at left guard for this game where he's comfortable. The Bill Callahan was not willing to name Radens the starter. Seahawks come to town. Do you think Rupsich has a path to making a wave in this right guard battle based on what you saw in the preseason game and what you have heard, from the coaching staff?
Yeah, I mean, sure. Look, I don't know. We talked about it last week. I don't know how committed this staff is to Dylan Radens because it came out the first day that Sadiq Charles had retired that he was splitting the reps 50-50 with with Rupsich and Radens. Paul Kuharsky corrected it the next day and said, well, from that day, that Thursday, he was getting all of the first team reps. So what was probably a valid question Wednesday, not really the case on Thursday. But then the way they deployed these guys on Saturday, I thought was pretty interesting because I would have thought you wanted to get an extended look at Rupsich in that right guard spot, but maybe they're like, hey, you know what? We've seen enough of him there. We want to test his versatility a little bit. Let's see if he can play as well at left guard. And you know what? Hey, maybe we got something here with this undrafted free agent rookie and Cole Spencer. Why don't we slot him at right guard and see if he can be a factor there? So I still think this is very much a situation that's up in the air. And I think they're probably exploring every possibility that they can for that spot. As far as Spencer goes, I was impressed with him as well on the tape. Compared to what I watched from him at Texas Tech, I felt like he was getting lower in his stance and generating a little more explosiveness out of it. But for me, what was so impressive was his positioning, like the hat placement, the leverage, like getting to the right spot to seal off a run lane or getting to a block, like nailing his assignments, if you will. I thought he was particularly good at that, surprisingly good at that. That is something that is encouraging to me because it shows something that didn't necessarily show up on his tape. So I think he and Rupsich both could get some looks there this week if this staff is maybe feeling non-committal to Dylan Radens.
Yeah, it kind of feels like they are, and we know that Bill Callahan is like heavily invested in Cole Spencer's future. I don't know if he's a secret Callahan kid or something, but like this guy, I mean, he was like all about some Cole Spencer all in the pre-draft process. He's one of the guys that got paid the most money. So like, he's obviously a pet project at the very least, like Mike said, at least maybe not for this year, but maybe for next year, a guy that turns into something who seems to be taking the coaching and putting it into practice fairly easily. Watching it, I was very surprised. I was like, who is number 70? I had to pull up the list. I was like, oh, that's Cole Spencer at right guard. Because I was expecting it to be Rupsich. Like he looked like a undrafted free agent veteran.
Yes.
Like a guy that has maybe kicked around the league a few times. He didn't look like an undrafted free agent rookie. Like that's something that I took away from Cole Spencer. The quarterbacks played. I'm in a couple of group chats. A lot of people were like hating on Mason Rudolph. I would encourage you to go back and watch the All 22. Mason Rudolph is clearly better than Malik Willis. Listen, and here's why I'll leave it with Malik Willis. I'm not here to pile on Malik Willis, who we have just drug through the dirt over and over, it feels like. Malik Willis is a very nice guy. Malik Willis has improved from year 1 to year 2 and now year 2 to year 3. That doesn't mean much. because Malik Willis was so bad, and he's still making the same mistakes. He's still choosing to hold on to the ball too long. He's not trusting what his eyes see. You see, Braden talked about it on the Thursday preview show for a football show for this game. He said Jaquan Jackson's getting open. It's just that Malik Willis is his quarterback, and he's not getting any targets. And in this game, I went through the 8 routes that Jaquan Jackson ran, and he was open for 6 of them, and Malik Willis just could not get him the ball. And he stared him down one time and said, "Oh, this is what I feel like he said. Oh, you're open. Have a blessed day. I'm going to fucking run it instead." like he could have passed it, but he's like, "No, I'm just going to run it instead."
He also missed him wide open on a crosser. He just airmailed it.
It was bad. And listen, it's not just Jaquan Jackson that got the brunt of it. He was running to the right at one point. Like the sack, he didn't have to take the sack. He could have dumped it off to Jaquan Jackson, but there was another play where he rolled out, and the guy, and Charles Davis talked about, he's like, he had 3 guys open. I don't know why he just didn't throw it. And like in all 22, he had 3 guys open. I don't know why he just didn't throw it. And then he threw it, and he threw it behind Sam Schnee, which is a whole other issue. Who was wide open. But like, I think Malik Willis had the best pass of the night, and Bryce Oliver had the best catch of the night from either team. But Malik Willis is nowhere near threatening the quarterback 2 job. And I'm putting him on the roster right now because I think that he has shown enough that you probably would like to develop him to be the backup next year. Maybe he does take that leap and you want to keep him in a system and keep some consistency and all that kind of stuff. But for anybody who thinks there's a quarterback competition, it was laughable when Brian Callahan said it initially a couple of months ago. It became laughable when people ate up that 3-day practice window where he was exceptional. He's not threatening the quarterback 2 job. It is Mason Rudolph's job, and Mason Rudolph has a stranglehold on it like he's Sergeant Slaughter. Like he's got him in the camel clutch, and it's over. Do y'all disagree with anything I said about Malik Willis?
No, I don't. I have been saying on this show and other shows, like, hey, he had that great practice that Saturday at Nissan Stadium. Give him his flowers, let him have his week, and then we can move on with our lives. And now's the part where we move on with our lives. I think you nailed the analysis of it. I think it's encouraging that we are starting to see some of the throws like the one he made to Bryce Oliver, but the fact that he's still inconsistent with it, I think is still a concern. I think there's still a ways to go. Like you said, maybe he can be a good quarterback in the future, a good backup, but I'm not banking on him right now.
Mike?
Yeah, I kind of landed in a similar spot with him. I will say this. If you go back and watch preseason game number 1 from his rookie year and compare it to this, he is a lot better. He is a lot better. Like playing within the timing of the offense, cutting the ball loose, all that stuff. Much, much, much better. That said, that the accuracy is still scattershot, and he misses too many throws that he should hit. And he does still have, I think, some struggles with vision, seeing the field, seeing guys being open, that kind of thing. It just doesn't look always that natural to him.
Like he's very timid.
Yeah, I think he is a little bit reserved on that. He's more in the Mariota mindset than the Levis mindset when it comes to challenging windows and things like that. Now, I will also say this was the most explosive I've ever seen him look as far as from an athletic standpoint. He moved much more like the guy that I think everyone thought he was going to be coming out of Liberty, as far as just like an incredible athlete. He looked like that guy, which, again, it's intriguing to me, but not enough so that I would want him to be the backup quarterback. I think Mason Rudolph played perfectly well. I think he needed to cut that ball loose to Stylianos earlier, obviously. But otherwise, I thought his decision-making was good. He had a few balls batted at the line of scrimmage. But decision-making was good. Accuracy was good. Command of the huddle, command of the offense would look good. All that. So I really think it is Mason Rudolph should be the backup. And Yeah, I guess I would probably have Malik on my 53 today if I had to make one. But this, he'd be very much on that.
It's a very
he's like
tenuous
maybe
situation.
53.
Yeah. Speaking of Steve Stylianos, I thought the tight ends really showed up. They did a lot of 12 personnel with Malik Willis, but I thought that I'm beginning to lean that this Tennessee Titans team is keeping 4 tight ends, and I don't know who the 4th tight end is, but I'm kind of leaning that this team is keeping 4 tight ends. Am I crazy to think that? It's almost like the Malik Willis thing. It's like if Malik Willis is 53, the 4th tight end is probably 52. Like that's kind of where I'm leaning. But I thought that David Martin Robinson, your boy that you've been touting forever, Mike, you could take a victory lap. I thought he looked really good, and he looked good just not passing or receiving the ball, but it looked good blocking. It wasn't perfect, but I thought he looked pretty good. Thomas Odukoya kind of looks like Thomas Odukoya always does, which is a good thing because Thomas Odukoya looks serviceable most of the time. And Steve Stylianos is just out there. But there was no Nick Vannett. I had one guy say that Nick Vannett's not going to even make the team in my mentions, and I'm like, wow. I don't know where you even come up with that.
I mean, he might not, but I don't think it's anything reflective of him not playing on Saturday.
Yeah. I think Nick Vannett's making the team. I mean, I think that's probably why they rested him, right? Like, because he's kind of a lock and, maybe he doesn't need it or whatever, and they wanted to see everybody else. Do you guys think they're keeping 4 tight ends? Am I crazy to kind of think that way? I'll start with you, Stoney.
I think if David Martin Robinson keeps having games like he did on Saturday night, he might force the issue. I don't lean 4 tight ends right now, but if I'm going to sit here all summer and spout this 12 personnel agenda that I'm on, you probably don't want to keep just 3 tight ends. You probably want another one in there if you're going to run more of that stuff. And I think if you are going with a 4th one, I think DMR is the guy to go with right now. We've known he's a good athlete. He's a weapon as a pass catcher, but to me, it was the blocking in the game Saturday night that really caught my eye, particularly in a clip that I have on my Twitter feed where they motion him into the backfield and then he seals off a lane for, I think it's Hassan Haskins, where he just gets in there and just levels the guy, just executes the block perfectly. And I kind of took a step back when I watched that and thought, oh shit, if this guy starts doing that kind of stuff to go with the playmaking ability and the athleticism, this is a guy they could probably use in a rotation with Nick Vannett, Chig, and Josh Wiley.
So take your victory lap, Mike.
Do it. As the world's foremost DMR supporter, I am excited to see everyone coming around on my love for David Martin Robinson. The athleticism, and this is why I liked him. The athleticism is obvious when you turn on the tape with him, and like it showed up in this game too. Like he is a natural athlete. He moves extremely well. He's extremely fluid and flexible. He looks natural catching the football. There is a lot to work with there from that standpoint. And like Stoney said, my question with him, whether he was going to make the roster or not, or even really make it as an NFL player, or even a fringe practice squad guy, was going to be, can he block enough to actually play tight end? Because there's a lot of really good athletes at tight end in the NFL, but if you can't block, you really can't, stick around unless you're exceptional. Which I don't think he's exceptional, right? Like he's a good athlete. He's not an exceptional athlete. So I was encouraged to see the blocking. Certainly excited by what I've seen from him and heard about him so far. And yeah, I'm intrigued, but I'm still not expecting him to make the roster. I think he's a practice squad guy, like a very top of the list practice squad guy that you probably wouldn't be that worried about probably having to put into a game if you need to call him up for, a Chig injury, especially because that's kind of a like for like situation there. I thought it was interesting while we're on the tight ends that Thomas Odukoya played 3 snaps with the ones with that first team group, which to me, like probably place holding for Nick Vannett if I had to guess, but he looked pretty good again and he still blocks well. He gives his fucking all every snap. I mean, that dude blocks like his life depends on it when he's out there, which is what I've always liked about him as well. So I have a couple tight end crutches in this room. And, I don't have anything against Nick Vannett, the man, but I mean, personally, I would be lying if I wasn't rooting a little bit for my boy Thomas O and DMR to unseat him for that third tight end spot.
Well, I will. I thought this was an interesting phrase from, or interesting way to put things coming from Brian Callahan when asked about the tight end room, and he gave props to Justin Otten and the development of these tight ends. It's like they're all back on the train of learning how to play tight end. It's talking specifically about Chig and Josh Wiley, which sounds like they didn't really learn how to play tight end last year by their running backs coach turned tight end coach. So just want to throw that out there. Spicy. I thought that was a nice little dig.
That is a little spicy.
Maybe it was a little spicy. Speaking of spicy, a guy that made me feel like I had diarrhea of the stomach, Jabari Small, was terrible. So I'm putting them to rest all the Jabari Small talk.
I mean,
no Jabari Small talk on this show further. I will not listen to Braden try to call him a dark horse again. That dark horse was turned into glue on Saturday night. It is over for Jabari Small. You volunteer fans had your chance. They catered to you, and guess what the volunteer player did? He shit the bed like they always do with their Tennessee Titans. Get Jabari Small out of here.
What did they see? How bad was Dylan Johnson that he got cut before Jabari Small did?
I don't even feel like they could see anything from Dylan Johnson. But did you not watch the college tapes are so different. They're drastically different. I do not understand the Dylan Johnson cut, if anything. And maybe we'd be saying the same thing about Dylan Johnson, but we'd be saying it like with a Viking funeral or something. But like, I'm just Jabari Small, get out of here.
It's 100% a Chestnut Haskins battle. That's it. Those are the only two third backs you need to talk about. It's going to be one of those two, and I'm leaning Haskins at the moment, even though it makes me sad.
I thought it was another case of Brian Callahan being misinformed or saying a preposterous thing. It's like when Denard Wilson said that the other rushers are on the roster, like the missing rushers on the roster if Arden Key gets suspended. Yeah, okay, sure. Saying that Julius Chestnut was the better runner, better on the ground, was laughable. He was 1.8 yards per carry. He was terrible on the ground. He was the better receiver, but Hassan Haskins didn't even get a target, and Hassan Haskins has got pretty good soft hands as a receiver.
I'll say this. I think he probably meant better with the ball in their hands, generally.
Maybe. We'll see.
Which
throws passes to Hassan Haskins, who looks so explosive, but all that speed, he has no clue what to do with this newfound speed. He has no clue what to do with it because he's just running into people's assholes and he's missing wide open lanes. Like, what are you gonna do with all that speed if your brain and your eyes can't catch up to you? It's not looking good for the short yardage back that they have to have.
No, listen. This is the third running back is not going to be a short yardage back. They're not going to use
that's
these
what they said that they want. That's what they need. That's their words, not my words. And
they are not going to use these guys in short yardage situations. They're dumb if they do. They need to use Pollard and Spears. Those are the best running backs that you have.
100%.
To me, 15 pounds of weight is not going to make the difference between you getting in the end zone or not as much as being quick to the hole will. Because I think being a big back for goal line and short yardage stuff is one of the most overrated things in football. I think, if you give me Brandon Jacobs on a 1 yard, run or LaDainian Tomlinson, give me LaDainian Tomlinson, right? Like, come on. What are we doing here? Give me the better back, the guy that's going to hit the hole quicker, the guy has better vision, better feel than the guy that's just got the body armor on. I mean,
and I'm with you. I'm just going off what they say.
I think they're full of shit. I hope they are going to run those guys. Like, those guys are not going to see the field on offense unless somebody's hurt.
I worry though. You never know. Maybe it's that I'm an abused relationship with Mike Vrabel. I'm really worried that they think that. So hopefully not.
Well, your friends call you Whiskey.
Who do you think's in the lead? Who do you think's getting the spot, Stoney?
I would lean Haskins right now.
Me too. So we're all three Haskets.
I don't know. Like, can we just keep 2 running backs on this roster, and then maybe that reserves a spot for David Martin Robinson, who can motion into the backfield and be the running back too, and Jaquan Jackson, put him in the backfield? Like, do we need to keep both of these guys?
No, and
or one of these 2 guys,
or we can, as we get into the wide receivers here, just real quick, and because we still got defense to talk about.
Oh my God!
Or they put Kearis Jackson in as a running back, which is something that Mike proposed today, and I'm all in. Kearis Jackson, convert him to running back. I do it all the time in college football 25. I took a quarterback with 97 speed, put him at running back, and he got 1,600 yards and 22 touchdowns. Let's do it. Let's ride. Kearis Jackson, running back, RB3. You heard it here first.
I like that too.
Yeah. It's Mike's. That's Mike's take, by the way. So don't want to take credit for it, just in case everybody thinks it's stupid. It's Mike's baby. That's his brainchild.
His skill set is better suited to playing running back. I'm convinced of it at this point.
He just drifts too much in his routes, and I just feel like he's never in the right spot at the right time, and that's why he's not getting balls thrown his way and stuff. I think I'm with everybody that has pretty much said it, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but Jaquan Jackson has the edge, I think, for that 6-ish wide receiver spot, because he's also got the drafted edge and he's part of this regime. But he also has been getting open, and he does provide you a intermediate to deep threat, because he does get open with the speed. Today, Tyke Tolbert talked about how he wants him to beat press first with his feet, because that's what he's most comfortable with, than with his hands. So they do know that he's got to work that way. But I did think it was weird that we did not see Jaquan Jackson unless it was the third string offense in 11 personnel. Sam Schnee and Bryce Oliver were your starters, your top 2 receivers on that third string. And listen, maybe this is how the people who cheered for Trey McBride, who thought that Golden Tate for the Tennessee Titans was going to be the next big thing, maybe this is how people feel about Mason Kinsey. But God dang it, I like me some Bryce Oliver. He's put together a good camp. He provides you something a little bit different than what these other slot guys does, because he is an outside guy. And listen, I understand that he's just going to go right on the practice squad, right? But there's a good example of what going on the practice squad can do for a player, and a good example of that is NWI. And I hope that maybe they have made that connection in the wide receiver room, and Bryce Oliver makes it over to the practice squad, and maybe he turns into the next NWI. So he's the next Nick Westbrook inevitable. The Oliver Geddon is on its way. That's all I'm saying.
Go. Witty right there. I liked Bryce Oliver a lot. I think he was doing some really advanced NFL wide receiver stuff on Saturday night. The speed variance to approach the defensive back, the cornerback not really knowing what to do, timing his break in perfectly, not just like freezing the defensive back and breaking in, but freezing the defensive back and breaking in at the time the 2 routes down the field get past you. So you're causing conflict in those next level defenders. You spring wide open, catch the ball, turn it up the field, move the chain, concentration at the point of the catch. He was putting some really good nuanced receiving skills on display on Saturday night. I'm a fan.
I will say this. I do have a worry that if you cut him, and the reason being is that San Francisco has suffered a lot of injuries in this wide receiver room, and they just got a good look at Bryce Oliver. Just throw that out there. It's usually how sometimes these waiver wires work. You get a good look at the guy, and the guy's cooking you, and Bryce Oliver cooked him a lot. Kind of where it goes. Mike, Jaquan Jackson's job to lose at this point, you think, or do you really think that Mason Kinsey has a shot?
I'm conflicted right now, because I think it's notable that both Phillips and Kinsey worked way, way, way higher in the rotation at wide receiver than Jaquan Jackson did. Now, that just may be they know the offense better. They've been around, that are more trustworthy to work with a veteran quarterback in Mason Rudolph. But that caught my eye a little bit, that there just was no Jaquan Jackson in that second unit at all. On the flip side of that, Jaquan Jackson was clearly the guy that they were pushing on punt returns, kick returns, everything like that. So to me, again, I keep going back to like that 6 wide receiver spot. We know that the 3 starters are going to make it. Burks, NWI, those guys are going to make the roster. Who that 6 wide receiver is going to be who the punt returner is. And I think if they're pushing Jaquan Jackson up as the punt returner, I think that ultimately is the key to that spot as far as getting onto the roster. Now, like we talked about earlier, I don't think that completely supersedes everything, but whoever is going to be their punt returner is going to be that 6th person. So the fact that he got all the looks at punt returner, right? Did they even give Kinsey any punt return opportunities? They might not have punted.
Maybe they do this week. Maybe they're because it was just Kearis Jackson was just the kick returner, and then Jaquan Jackson was just the punt returner. Maybe they
Jaquan was deep. Jaquan was deep with Kearis on the kick return stuff, but I don't think he ever got to kick the ball. I think they always kicked to Kearis for whatever reason. But yeah, maybe they're taking it week by week. Maybe it's going to be Mason Kinsey's week this week, and then I don't know what else.
Maybe they'll do. They did the Jacksons, so maybe they'll do the White Boys, and they'll do Kyle Phillips and Mason Kinsey this week.
But it'll be interesting to see how that rotation works. But I'm not completely sold that it's Jaquan Jackson's job yet. But I definitely I think that one's still pretty open, in my opinion.
Well, let's talk about this defense. The defense looked fun at times, looked confused at other times. Let's start with the first string defense. I wrote about it in this morning, Stacking Inbox on Tuesday morning. You've kind of put out a tweet about the very first play. T'Vondre Sweat takes on, 2 guys at the offensive line. Kenneth Murray comes barreling through because the running back also goes up near T'Vondre Sweat, and Kenneth Murray comes barreling through untouched, and all that starts and ends with a rushed throw at the feet of a receiver. And I write about it, and it's kind of like, to me, that is the signature play that you should probably expect from the career of T'Vondre Sweat. He takes on 2 guys, clears a massive hole for someone else to take advantage of it, forces and ends the play in an incomplete pass or a sack or something else, but he doesn't get the stat. And that's indicative of what I think T'Vondre Sweat is. And he also pushed those people over. Now, there were other plays where he contained kind of the defense and contained the play, and he didn't rush. And it sounds like that's something they wanted him to practice. But at the end of the day, I would say it was like kind of how I described J.C. Latham. It may be, I think I liked his performance a little bit better than J.C. Latham. I don't know. But I get to the point where it's just like, those guys, they're all the hype. We didn't see the hype, but they still played very well, in my opinion. The rest of the defense, and I'm just going to kind of let you guys meander around this defense, but the rest of this starting defense looked like it was playing a defense that hadn't practiced all year. That's kind of what Easton alluded to as well. It kind of looked like they were trying to hit unfamiliar landmarks. You saw a bunch of guys in the same zone. It just was, and that's not what they're going to play. They're not going to play zone, because I saw people complain, well, I thought we got rid of the zone. Well, they're not unleashing the playbook. Should they probably have done a little bit more man coverage to make sure that they all don't look like idiots out there? Because it kind of felt like they were all running each other. I'm not here to panic about the starting defense quite yet. It was missing 5 starters as well. I'm just here to say, I just think that wasn't the defense we should expect to see from a schematic standpoint. And I think when the regular season starts up, we're going to be like, whoa, where was this defense in the preseason? It's kind of going to be like what people are going to say. And I just think, hey, it is what it is. Not too worried about it. I don't think that Jack Gibbons' seat is that warm, or is as warm as people wanted to make it out to be after that game. But that's just my overall takeaways from the starting defense. I'll start with you, Mike. Meander around, explore the space, talk about the starting defense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would disagree in that I think that they were running schematically what they're going to run. Now, did they show every blitz? Certainly not. Are they going to have Rashad Weaver playing off the ball in the regular season? Yes. Lord, I hope not. So
they are. They've been practicing that a lot.
Oh God. Okay. They need to stop doing that and just do anything else. But they are going to play some zone. I mean, it's going to be a mix of zone and man. You can't just line up and run man every snap, obviously. So like, but also you got to consider there's no L'Jarius Sneed, there's no Jeffrey Simmons, there's no Harold Landry, there's no Chidobe Awuzie, there's no Quandre Diggs. This was a pretty neutered version of the Titans personnel defensively. And the 49ers had a neutered offense out there too. So like, I'm not going to, make a total excuse here, but I thought you saw some of the stuff with the blitzing that was effective. I thought you saw what they see in Kenneth Murray from a standpoint of that first play. That's their vision for him. They see the guy that has like incredible burst, incredible explosive movement traits that can go get a quarterback and come downhill hard. Now, I thought he still looked kind of like Kenneth Murray when it came to his zone drops and everything like that. He had trouble sorting through traffic at times in the run game. So did Jack Gibbons. I still think that's a weak spot of the defense generally. But there's going to be some things. Kenneth Murray's going to make some big time splash plays too. So I think you're going to have some stuff that he does that drives you nuts, and you're going to have some stuff where he's going to look like an all-pro every now and then. So it's kind of a mixed bag for me. I was impressed with Jarvis Brownlee Jr. I thought he played well. I thought Sweat was okay. He overran one play that I saw. He had, a few impactful plays and a few that just, didn't look like anything special. I think that'll get better as he gets more comfortable. I think Blake Bedingfield over at PaulKowarski.com pointed out he was kind of late lining up several times, and it looked like he was kind of confused as to what he was supposed to be doing. Again, rookie, trying to get his feet wet, playing against a new offense that they probably hadn't done a lot of tape work on. And I'm not worried about that. I thought physically he looked the part. The pass rush is concerning to me still. Like, they couldn't get any pressure unless they blitzed. Again, no Simmons, no Landry. I get that, but you cannot have Simmons and Landry be the only guys who consistently get pressure and expect to have a solid pass rush. They're going to have to find other guys. Arden Key was like a total non-factor when he was out there, and I don't know if he's
he's
kind
off
of
the juice, so
bummed about the steroids thing and off the juice and just going through the motions or what, but he was a total non-factor when he was out there. So I don't know. It was a mixed bag for me with the first team defense, but they kind of seemed to settle in as the game went on, and I thought schematically, I thought there was some fun stuff. I love how aggressive he was blitzing on third downs and really like putting it on the quarterback, putting it on the receivers to make plays instead of just letting them have the little layups that we've seen too often in the last few years.
Stoney?
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to add to that, I agree with a lot of what Mike was saying there, but I think there's two ways to view the effort from the performance from the first team defense. I think the pessimistic view is to say nobody seemed to know what they were doing in coverage and that they're just like bumping into each other and all over the place back there, and that's concerning. I think the optimist view of it is that, hey, there's a possibility that this is something that this coaching staff wanted to work on in meaningful game reps in a preseason game, and they just weren't necessarily running what they thought was going to win them the game, but they were running what they wanted to get work in on. I was surprised to see it. Like, it just kind of seemed like you said, Zach, like there were times when two players are like hip and hip next to each other. It's like, well, that can't be the plan. That can't be done by design to have two guys standing right next to each other in coverage. As much as I love Roger McCreary, I felt like he was a little aimless out there at times, like not really committed, not really in the right spot at the right time as he's been known to be in the past. It was kind of perplexing. So I generally chalk it up to growing pains of learning a new system. I'm not ready to push the panic button yet, but man, I am eager to see.
It's a little disappointing.
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of a hole to dig themselves out of after that performance.
Well, the defense got more aggressive and looked a little bit more shade of what you thought as the game went on. And maybe it's just because they knew what the starters they had, how they've been practicing, how they look in the particular scheme, and they wanted to see what these people look like. Chance Campbell obviously had one of the best Tennessee Titans preseason games of all time. I mean, you get a sack, you get stops, you get an interception. I mean, it was an all-star dream game for Chance Campbell. And, it was funny, Mike, you put out the mock draftables web chart of his athleticism. At that, right before you did that, I just got done texting Stoney and telling him, like, man, I think we kind of it kind of flew under the radar that Chance Campbell is actually one of the more perfect kind of like linebackers for this Denard Wilson system because of his athleticism. And like, if you were drafting, like, you wouldn't draft him really high in this draft, but if you were drafting a linebacker that fit what Denard Wilson said he wanted, and Chance Campbell was coming out in this draft with the same tape he had a couple of years ago, you'd probably still draft him. And you would say that, well, this guy's going to fit with what they want. And then, of course, right then, it's like we all knew, we were all thinking the same thing. Like, Chance Campbell actually really fits the system. And Chance Campbell, to me, is a lot like Kyle Phillips. When he can play, he's really good. The problem has been his availability because he's had health issues. And then you got Otis Reese suddenly coming alive in this preseason game when he hasn't really done a lot of note from people on the ground in camp. And James Williams looks simply just like, I cannot wait for James Williams to actually learn the linebacking position and get comfortable with it, because he's going to be a wrecking ball.
He's going to decapitate someone.
Yes, he will. He will literally decapitate someone. But he's looked great. I feel a little bit better about the linebacker depth than I have in the past, but I don't think that anybody's going to unseat Jack Gibbons. And I think like it's going to have to be Cedric Gray, but Cedric Gray is unavailable, and we don't know how far back he's going to fall behind the pack. And first off, I was about to ask a question I already know the answer to. Yes, Titans fans are totally overrating, and they're overrating how bad the Jack Gibbons performance was and overrating how great the Chance Campbell performance was. The depth chart's almost like a big board. Your top 100 is not going to move much. Your top 40 players aren't really going to move much. And I unless Jack Gibbons continues the trend, which I don't think he will, because they talked about again today how great he is at getting into the spots and knowing where he's supposed to be and all this kind of stuff. So supposedly, I don't know what they're watching. I guess it's just practice, but he does do it in games. But I do kind of feel like this is kind of a deal where it's like, remember David Long and Jaylen Brown showing out in the preseason before they became full-time starters, and they would come in and show up in games here and there and like contributing factors, or when someone went down, they got to actually play a full game. And you're like, why aren't they starting these guys? If Chance Campbell stays healthy, I kind of feel like we're going to be saying that about Chance Campbell and James Williams. Like, why aren't they starting one of these guys? So where are you at with this linebacker depth? Where are you at with the performance, and how much stock can you take into the Chance Campbell All-Star game? That will go down as the Chance Campbell game in preseason. But Mike, where are you at on this linebacking core?
Yeah, I'm not too far removed from where I was previously. I mean, Campbell's game was certainly encouraging, and I've always kind of liked Chance Campbell. The athleticism when he was drafted, obviously it popped. He was hugely productive at Ole Miss that final year after he transferred from, I think it was Maryland, was where he was at before he landed at Ole Miss. But he was hugely productive at Ole Miss. Then tested off the charts, and I was like, yeah, this guy's kind of a steal as a 6th-round pick. And then the injuries kind of have cost him and halted his development and stuff like that. He seemed to fall out of favor with Vrabel. But he's kind of got this new lease on life now and making the most of it. He is an explosive athlete. He is very talented. And he will hit you, right? Like you saw kind of, he is not afraid to run in there and pop you, which is kind of a theme of a lot of the linebackers in this group. But I thought he was impressive, but I'm not getting carried away and saying like he's taken Jack Gibbons' job over one preseason game. Because again, like these preseason performances always get overhyped because it is the one, like from a fan standpoint, the fishbowl is the whole world, right? Like this is what you get to see. You get to see all the preseason games, and whatever happens in that preseason game is your exposure to that player. Whereas the coaches see him in the preseason game, sure, for a few snaps, but they see more snaps from him every day at practice. They see more reps from him, every day as far as like mental reps in the film room, talking to these guys, understanding what they know about the defense, what they don't know, those kind of things. And that like ocean of information is completely blind to the fan base for the most part. So that always outweighs whatever happens in these preseason games, which is why you end up with these like preseason heroes that get cut. And then people are like, they're idiots. They're stupid. And then the guy goes on to never do anything. But I think we can overrate it. That being said, Campbell has been, listed as the second team linebacker heading into this game, ahead of some of those other guys. I thought that was notable when it happened. And then he played like that, and it makes it a little bit more notable. So I still think like he has a roster spot that he could win. I don't think he's going to win the starting job, but he has a roster spot that he could win here. And maybe even a role like as the third linebacker in this group. And then the other guy I'll comment on is James Williams, who it struck me today. I don't know if you guys watched the Kenneth Murray mic'd up thing that the Titans put out today. It was actually very good. But he pulls James Williams aside at some point in this mic'd up clip and is talking to him. And he's like, basically he's telling him, look, you don't have to do all this finesse shit. He's like, look at you. You're the same size as me. Just run in and grab that bitch and throw him on the ground. That's what he says. And he was like, it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. And it struck me in that moment watching that, is like, James Williams is kind of Kenneth Murray. He's like super raw Kenneth Murray, which, Kenneth Murray's a little raw himself at times. But James Williams has a similar size, similar like just willing to like hit you like a viper kind of mentality. And he's got the wingspan and the explosive athletic traits and all that stuff. He's kind of like in that Kenneth Murray mold, and I'll be very interested to see, what happens with his development and if he ends up turning into something down the road, because he moves like a stud. I'm telling you, like watching him, you're like, God dang, that guy's got some juice, but he has no idea what he's doing right now, and it's obvious, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with him.
Stoney, I'm going to read you something from Jim's mailbag, and I want you to tell me if I'm reading too much into it.
Okay, let's hear
Drew,
it.
Chance played a great on Saturday, and he's had a good camp. I think he has a good chance to make it, the roster, but he just needs to keep his momentum going. His biggest issue to the point has been health the last 2 years. He's had some bad luck, but I think Chance is next in line behind Kenneth Murray and Jack Gibbons, battling with rookie Cedric Gray and others. I find it interesting. It's a little Jim Wyatt nugget, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, that Cedric Gray, he's battling with Cedric Gray, not battling with Otis Reese, not battling with Otis Reese and James Williams. It's Cedric Gray's the one who got mentioned, and him being on the tip of the tongue of Jim Wyatt coming off a Saturday performance where he didn't even play.
Yeah.
And James Williams and Otis Reese looked great. Just thought that was pretty interesting. Am I reading too much into it?
I don't think so, because the source is Jim Wyatt, and Jim has, as great as he is in all his glory, he's done this to us before, where you can go back after a decision has been made and you can read some random mailbag nugget where suddenly, with the presence of new information, the wording seems very careful, contrived in a certain way. Jim Wyatt might be the Zodiac killer for all we know, the way he codes messages in his mailbag. I think we actually probably, you bring up a great point, Zach, and I think we probably need to be keeping tabs on Jim Wyatt a little closer.
There you go. Stoney, let's end with this. Jalen Harrell didn't really do much. I mean, he played all three downs. I think he did nothing. I think he did a lot, but I mean, like, he wasn't flashy.
Yes,
I guess like that seems to be the thing, is like all the hype. The guys who had hype coming out of training camp into the first preseason game didn't really live up to it, and the guys who didn't have any hype coming out of it surpassed it. James Williams may be the lone exception in that, and Jarvis Brownlee Jr., I guess. But I look at Jalen Harrell and I watched him, and I'm like, okay, well, he started off kind of wonky, like the way he was kind of like frenetic in pass coverage. He was in the right spot on a play later on, and that the ball, he's lucky that the ball got thrown over the guy's head, because that guy may have came down with it, and but he's in a position to make a play and stop him. So I thought he showed some good things in coverage. I don't think that he's NFL strong yet, and I think that he's still learning. When I watch him play, I think he missed time to spin moves twice. There was 2 spin moves that he missed time twice. Now, he comboed a move and then into a spin move, and the combo worked and then the spin move didn't. But I see when they drafted him and they said, Stoney, he can be a 3-down player. I see that progress. I see that trend. I see what they're talking about. What do you think about Jalen Harrell's debut performance?
It felt very much to me like teaching a child how to ride a bike kind of deal. Like, you just got to get out there and get on it and go. And it felt like for him, they were just going to get him reps. Like, just get out here and play, do a little of this, little of that, just go through the motions. I think you're right. I think there is an element of raw power that is missing from his game, but I also thought he was pretty effective in setting the edge when called upon. And that's not necessarily, that doesn't mean he's blowing dudes back or anything like that, but just getting out there. It's after dark, baby. It's after dark, baby. I think, in his long arm, kind of keeping guys at bay, and then I can't dig myself out of here. Keeping with a good long arm move there, getting to the edge,
keep going.
Getting in the way kind of edge setting is what I'm talking about there, like forcing the running backs to go inside. I thought he was better at than I watched him do on tape at Michigan, but I still think he's learning the ropes as a pass rusher. And I think they are working with him to learn more moves and deploy more moves. And until he gets to that point where the light bulb is going off, I think it's just going to be a matter of throwing him into the deep end, getting a ton of reps in these preseason games, and seeing, how he comes through on the other side.
Mike, just real quick, because we got to close this show out. It's getting late. Definitely past my bedtime.
I've yawned twice on the show. So.
Your thoughts on Jalen Harrell?
It's encouraging that he was working as high in the rotation as he was. He was out there with the first team group, obviously the stripped down first team group, but it's a good sign for him that they were giving him that much run. And just kind of letting him work things out and get some reps. I think he's going to make the team. And I think it's just a matter of whether or not he's actually a part of the opening day rotation at this point, more so than whether or not he's going to make the 53, which is good for a guy that was a 7th round pick. He's already made some progress up that depth chart, it seems. So, he wasn't spectacular, but it'll be interesting to track him. It's just one game, that's the one thing I think we got to tie in with all of this conversation. It is just one preseason game. In a lot of cases, as we're especially talking about the starters, we're talking about like 15 snaps. So not a huge sample size. There are guys that have bad runs of 15 snaps all the time that are good players. There are guys that have good runs of 15 snaps that are bad players. So you never want to take too much away from like one preseason game, but it's worth like it's the most relevant stuff that we've been able to see in quite some time. So I get it, but yeah, we got to couch all that with. We'll see what the bigger sample size holds for all these guys.
Stoney, and I'll start with you, and we're going to go around. Who needs the biggest? Who needs to show up the most this week in the practices at against the joint practices? You can give me a position group or one player, but give me something that you're looking for in this joint practices that you are like, okay, we got to see this happen this week, not including the game, just the joint practices.
I think we need a big week from Gabe Judy Lawley. I don't think he was necessarily terrible on Saturday night, but I think he was a guy that was poised to have a big game where you find out what we're seeing in practice going to translate to game action. And I don't think you necessarily saw that with him, but I think we've talked about a good deep receiving core for the Seahawks coming to town. I think it'll be a big test for him, and I think it'll be an opportunity for him to get back on track in a positional battle that I still feel is pretty open because of the injury to Cheeto. And I don't see it. I don't see it with Trey Avery, man. I'm sorry. I know everybody says he's good
we haven't seen it at Avery for like 2 or 3 years.
But every time they post,
I think we're getting gaslit about Trey Avery
I think so, because every time they post a clip of a highlight deep bomb, it's over 23. So I think Gabe Judy Lawley needs to have a step up week this week.
Mike?
As I said earlier today, do you think like Trey or Avery is just like walking through the gas station, walking through the mall, and people are throwing footballs at him? Because like that dude just gets targeted every single time he steps foot on any football field. So I wonder, is that just he's just got a very throwable face, or what's happening? But the guy that I think I want to see step up, like I want to see Peter Skoronski against the interior of the Seahawks defensive line, because the strength of the Seahawks defense is their corners, for one, which will be a good test for Calvin Ridley and Treylon Burks, trying to see kind of as he's trying to kind of prove himself in year 3 here. But I want to see Skoronski. I want to see Radens. I want to see Cushenberry matching up with Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, and Jerron Reed. Those 3 guys on the interior that Seahawks defensive line, really good players, and they'll give them a good test, and that'll be a good stress test for kind of the interior triangle of that center guard center or guard center guard triangle. It's late combination for the Titans. So I'm intrigued to watch those matchups.
I'm ready to see Jaquan Jackson get more run with the 2s or even the 1s. I think it's time. I understand that the concerns are he's learning how to be in the huddle. But this is the good week to do it, especially if, your Calvin Ridley's, your DeAndre Hopkins, and others may not see a lot of run. It's time to bump him up, throw him in the deep end, see what he can do. I've been impressed. I have to say, I've been impressed with what I've seen in the all-22. Even if he wasn't getting targeted, I was impressed with what I saw. But now we need to see it, and we need to get these quarterbacks start targeting him to actually see what can he do with the ball in his hands besides these 1v1s and stuff like that. I want to see in 7-on-7s, 11-on-11s what this kid can do. And Malik Willis is not the quarterback to try to get a wide receiver to showcase what he can do if he's not going to get targeted. So I need to see a lot of Jaquan Jackson this week throughout the practice. Here's some stuff. So that's where I'm at right there. That will do for us, Football and Other Efforts After Dark. We appreciate you guys staying up late with us or tuning in early if you're listening to the podcast. We appreciate it. Mike Herndon at Mike Herndon NFL. You can read more of his preseason thoughts over at podcarsky.com. Stoney Keeley's going to have a Film Friday this week over at secondinbox.com on Amani Hooker, because he's tired of the Amani Hooker slander from Mike and D-Will. I emptied out my preseason notebook over at Stacking Inbox this morning. On Tuesday, on Wednesday, you'll have my rookie review where I review pretty much all the drafted rookies and undrafted free agents. So go over to stackinginbox.com for that. For Stoney, for Mike, I'm Zach. This has been Football and Other F Words After Dark. And you have just been effed.